The night air in New York City was crisp, carrying the faint hum of traffic far below the towering skyline. From the outside, the Benson family's penthouse looked like a palace of light. Floor-to-ceiling windows glowed warmly, and soft music floated into the streets, teasing passers-by with a hint of luxury and elegance. It was the kind of party people dreamed of attending, and tonight every guest wanted to be inside. Inside, the Benson penthouse sparkled with wealth. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, catching the light and scattering it in tiny rainbows across the marble floors. The furniture was carefully chosen to reflect sophistication: velvet couches in deep jewel tones, glass tables that gleamed, and gold accents scattered everywhere. Waiters in crisp black vests carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, moving gracefully among the guests, ensuring no one went without a drink or a bite. The Benson family, known across the country for their vast business empire, had spared no expense. Henry Benson, the patriarch, stood near the center of the room, greeting guests with a firm handshake and a polite smile. His wife, Clara Benson, moved gracefully among the crowd, chatting softly and laughing lightly, her expensive jewelry catching the light with every gesture. Their children, David and Emma, mingled with ease, seemingly born into the rhythm of high society. Yet amid all the grandeur and the laughter, one guest stood apart: Maya Lewis. She was young, poised, and calm, dressed simply in a black dress that fell just below her knees. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and her minimal makeup made her look natural yet elegant. Unlike most of the guests, Maya had not come to flaunt wealth or to network for personal gain. She had been invited as a representative of a non-profit organization she deeply cared about. The Bensons had promised to support her cause financially, and her presence tonight was meant to solidify that partnership. Maya moved carefully through the crowd, observing the people around her. The conversation was full of polished small talk, discussions about the stock market, real estate ventures, expensive vacations, and charity events. Laughter rang out, sometimes genuine, sometimes forced. Glasses clinked constantly, and the scent of expensive perfume mingled with the aroma of gourmet food. Despite the opulence, Maya felt a quiet determination inside her. She reminded herself why she was here. This was not a night to get lost in wealth or distraction. It was a night to ensure her cause received the support it deserved. She approached a small group near the bar, where David Benson was talking to a few young investors. He was tall, with neatly styled hair, and dressed in a tailored suit that fit him perfectly. He had an easy smile, though Maya noticed a hint of arrogance in the way he moved and spoke. "Good evening," Maya said politely, extending her hand. David shook it, barely glancing at her, and offered a brief smile. "Evening," he replied, then turned his attention back to the people he had been speaking with. Maya nodded, stepping slightly to the side. She didn't let the slight brush of dismissiveness affect her. She had learned long ago that patience and composure could speak louder than words. Moments later, David was gesturing excitedly while telling a story. His hand moved too quickly, and the glass of red wine he held wobbled dangerously. Maya, unfortunately, happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. In a heartbeat, the wine tipped and splashed across her dress. The deep red liquid spread quickly, dark against the black fabric. Gasps filled the air, and a few people laughed nervously, unsure how to react. Maya froze, feeling the heat rise to her cheeks, not from the spill itself but from the shock and humiliation. She could see the surprise and concern in some eyes. But there was also a faint trace of amusement from others, including David's friends. David looked down at her dress and then at his hands, and for a moment time seemed to stretch. Instead of apologizing immediately, he chuckled awkwardly and said, "Well, that's unfortunate." He glanced around at the group he had been speaking to, as if this were a minor inconvenience rather than an embarrassing incident. Maya's mind raced. She could feel her heart pounding, but she didn't scream or cry. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm. "It's fine," she said softly, her voice steady. "Accidents happen." Despite her words, the room felt heavy. Laughter and whispers circled around her like an invisible weight. She noticed Clara Benson watching from across the room, her expression unreadable. Henry Benson seemed distracted by another conversation, oblivious to the tension. Maya realized that she could not rely on anyone here to defend her immediately. She had to handle this herself. Maya excused herself and moved toward a quiet corner near the large windows. The city lights stretched endlessly outside, offering a view of skyscrapers and streets filled with life, completely unaware of the tension inside this golden cage. She took out her phone, her hand steady despite the lingering shock, and dialed a familiar number. "Hello, Maya?" came a calm voice on the other end. It was Mr. Jordan, a respected lawyer and advisor she trusted. "Is everything all right?" Maya explained the situation briefly but clearly, describing not just the spill but the dismissive attitude and laughter that followed. She spoke without anger, but with a quiet firmness that made it clear she would not tolerate being disrespected. "Understood," Mr. Jordan said after a moment of silence. "Stay calm and let me handle the rest. Do not let this ruin your night. You've done nothing wrong." Maya felt a small wave of relief wash over her. Even though she was humiliated in front of a room full of wealthy socialites, she still had control over what would happen next. She had prepared for challenges before, and this would not be any different. As she returned to the room, she held herself with renewed poise. Guests continued to chatter and laugh, some still glancing at her, but Maya ignored them. She made her way to the center of the room, standing tall, and spoke briefly to a few key people about her nonprofit work. Her confidence and calm presence slowly drew attention, not for the wine on her dress, but for her ideas and dedication. Meanwhile, David Benson noticed her talking to influential guests with ease. For the first time that evening, he felt a pang of unease. He had underestimated her composure, and her grace under pressure contrasted sharply with his own clumsy arrogance. He turned to his friends, forcing a smile, but the charm he relied on seemed to falter. As the evening continued, Maya realized something important. She could not control the wealth or power of the Bensons, but she could control her dignity, her actions, and her response to humiliation, and in that moment, she decided that this night, meant to impress her, would instead become a quiet demonstration of her strength. By the time the party reached its peak, with laughter echoing and music swelling, Maya's presence had become more significant than the glittering surroundings. Some guests whispered about her intelligence, her calmness, and her resilience. The spill of wine, intended as a mark of humiliation, had instead highlighted her composure and determination. For the Benson family, the night continued as a display of wealth and privilege. But for Maya Lewis, it had become a night of quiet victory, a reminder that dignity and strength could shine even in a room full of glimmering wealth, and that true influence came from character, not money. And as the city below glittered like a field of stars, Maya felt a sense of clarity. This night was only the beginning of something far greater, something no amount of wine or arrogance could ever take away from her. The Benson penthouse had slowly started to quiet down. Some guests had left, and others lingered in small groups, sipping wine and discussing deals that seemed far removed from the ordinary lives of most people. Music played softly in the background, and the glimmer of crystal chandeliers reflected in the polished floors. Maya Lewis, still feeling the faint sting of embarrassment from the wine incident, had retreated to a quiet corner by the windows. She gazed out over the city, the lights twinkling like a sea of stars below. The noise of the party felt distant here, almost unreal, compared to the calm she felt when she focused on the skyline. Her dress was still damp with red wine, but she refused to let it define her. She adjusted her posture, standing tall, her chin slightly raised. Her hands rested lightly on the windowsill as she drew in a deep breath. Though some laughter and whispers still floated from the main room, she reminded herself that dignity came not from the absence of mistakes, but from the strength to face them. Meanwhile, back in the main room, David Benson had begun to feel the subtle weight of scrutiny. His friends noticed his unease and exchanged curious glances. They had laughed at the incident when it happened, thinking it harmless. But now, as they watched Maya speak confidently with a few influential guests, they realized that she had not only remained calm, but she was quietly commanding attention. David tried to approach her. "Hey, I didn't mean," he began, but his words faltered. He didn't know how to apologize properly. The easy charm he relied on didn't seem enough in this moment. Maya looked at him, her expression calm but firm. "It's okay," she said again, her voice soft but steady. "Accidents happen." David's cheeks burned slightly. He glanced at his friends, hoping for guidance, but found none. He realized in that instant that apologies needed to be sincere, and his initial reaction had lacked that. The room, filled with influential guests, seemed to hum with quiet tension. Clara Benson, standing nearby, had observed the entire exchange. She was known for her social grace and ability to manage delicate situations, yet even she felt a flicker of discomfort. Something about Maya's composure challenged the family's usual control over their surroundings. She exchanged a brief look with Henry, who was deeply engaged in a conversation about a potential investment. "Perhaps we should address it properly," Clara whispered, but Henry merely nodded absent-mindedly, still focused on the business matters that always dominated his attention. Maya, however, did not seek validation or attention. She moved with quiet purpose through the remaining guests, introducing herself to a few key individuals connected to her nonprofit project. Her calm demeanor and confident explanations made an impression. People began to take notice not of her dress or the spilled wine, but of her ideas, her clarity, and her unwavering composure. As the evening continued, whispers spread through the room. Some guests were impressed with Maya's resilience. Others exchanged uneasy glances with the Bensons, realizing that the situation had taken on a significance far beyond a simple spill. A few even admired how gracefully Maya had handled the incident, turning a moment that could have been humiliating into an opportunity to demonstrate her strength. David Benson tried to regain control of the situation. He attempted small talk, offering polite smiles and gestures, but Maya's attention was elsewhere. She engaged with people who could help her cause, who could bring meaningful change, and who understood the importance of respect and integrity in every interaction. David felt a sense of frustration, a rare feeling for someone used to having influence simply by being born into wealth. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, David's frustration became noticeable. He muttered under his breath, a mix of irritation and regret. "Why does she carry herself like that? Why isn't she embarrassed?" His friends looked at him, unsure how to respond. They had never seen him this unsettled before. Meanwhile, Maya found herself speaking with Mr. Carter, a philanthropist who had supported various educational programs across the city. He listened intently as she explained her nonprofit's mission: to provide educational resources to underserved communities. Her passion and sincerity were evident in every word. "I must say," Mr. Carter said, "you handle yourself with remarkable poise. Many people would have been rattled tonight, but you seem unshakable." Maya smiled faintly, feeling a small wave of relief. "Thank you. I believe that our focus should always remain on the work we do, not on the distractions along the way." As the conversation continued, David observed from a distance, growing increasingly aware of the contrast between his own behavior and Maya's. Her calm, measured approach highlighted the arrogance and thoughtlessness of his earlier actions. He realized that wealth and influence alone could not command respect. True respect was earned through character, integrity, and courage. At that moment, Clara Benson approached Maya. Her expression was careful, her voice soft and deliberate. "Maya, I wanted to apologize for what happened earlier. It was completely inappropriate, and I hope you will forgive the accident." Maya nodded politely. "Thank you. I appreciate your words. Accidents happen, and I hope the rest of the evening can be pleasant for everyone." Clara felt a small measure of relief. She had hoped for a smoother evening, but witnessing Maya's grace gave her a quiet reminder that humility and sincerity often mattered more than wealth or appearances. David, still standing nearby, watched silently. He realized that this evening would leave a mark, not just on Maya, but on the Benson family itself. For the first time, he understood that the world was larger than his family's influence, and that actions, even small ones, had consequences far beyond the walls of this glittering penthouse. Maya continued to move through the remaining guests, each conversation reinforcing her resolve. She spoke with confidence, shared her vision, and listened with genuine interest to others' perspectives. Slowly, the focus in the room shifted. People began to admire her intelligence, dedication, and poise. The spilled wine, which had been intended as an embarrassment, faded into the background, replaced by the respect she quietly commanded. David's unease grew. The evening that had begun as a display of wealth and privilege now highlighted a truth he had never fully considered. Respect could not be bought, and character could not be ignored. He realized that Maya's quiet strength had turned the night into something far more significant than he had imagined. Henry Benson, Still unaware of the subtler social shifts happening around him, continued discussions of business deals and investments. Clara, however, observed the subtle changes. She saw the way guests looked at Maya, the way whispers of admiration circulated, and the quiet discomfort in David's posture. She understood that wealth and social status, while powerful, could not overshadow genuine integrity. As the party neared its end, Maya found herself near the grand windows once more, looking down at the city lights. The hum of the city below was a comforting reminder that life moved beyond the confines of wealth and privilege. She had navigated the evening with composure, turning what could have been humiliation into a moment of quiet strength and influence. David approached her one last time before leaving. I hope you know it wasn't personal," he said, his tone sincere but hesitant. Maya nodded. "I understand. Let's focus on what truly matters." With that, David left and Maya turned back to the city lights, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The night had tested her, but she had faced the challenge with dignity. The spilled wine, the laughter, and the whispers of the party would fade, but her composure and strength had left a lasting impression on everyone who had observed. And in the quiet aftermath, Maya realized something important. The world would often try to challenge, belittle, or dismiss her, but her response, calm, measured, and confident, would always speak louder than any insult or mistake. Tonight was only the beginning, and she felt ready for whatever came next. The morning after the gala, New York City felt different to Maya Lewis. The streets buzzed with the usual traffic, the sound of construction, and the early chatter of pedestrians, but Maya felt a quiet sense of determination. She had spent the night reflecting on what had happened at the Benson party. The spilled wine, the whispers, the laughter. It could have been a moment of humiliation. But instead she had turned it into a display of dignity, calm, and focus. Maya arrived at her small but tidy office in downtown Manhattan. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, painting the room in warm golden tones. Her nonprofit staff had already begun their day, preparing reports, organizing events, and planning for the upcoming outreach program. Maya greeted them with a small smile, her mind only partially on the tasks at hand. Most of her thoughts were still on the Bensons and the events of last night. She sat at her desk, her phone in hand. She knew there was one call that could change everything. One person whose attention could turn the night's humiliation into a moment of serious consequence. She dialed Mr. Jordan, a prominent business consultant and legal advisor who had guided her in the past. "Good morning, Maya." Jordan's calm voice came through the line. "How are you today?" Maya took a deep breath. "Good morning, Mr. Jordan. I'm well, thank you. I wanted to discuss something important about the Benson family. Last night, the way they treated me at their party, it was unprofessional and disrespectful. I believe it could affect their business partnerships, and I want to make sure we approach it carefully." There was a pause on the other side. Jordan's tone became serious. "Tell me exactly what happened, Maya. Every detail matters." She explained the incident clearly and calmly. How David had splashed wine on her without apology. How guests had laughed. How the family had not taken responsibility. And how she had handled herself with composure, despite the humiliation. She described how the Bensons' arrogance and disregard for basic respect could be significant in their professional dealings. Jordan listened without interruption. After a moment, he said, "Maya, you handled yourself with remarkable poise. This is not just a social incident. It can have real consequences for the Benson family. They are involved in ongoing negotiations with multiple companies, some worth billions of dollars. A demonstration of disrespect, especially towards someone representing a serious nonprofit initiative, can influence their partner's perception of them." Maya nodded, listening intently. She had expected some acknowledgement, but the weight of Jordan's words surprised her. The spilled wine, she realized, was more than a social faux pas. It could ripple far beyond the penthouse walls. Jordan continued, "We need to document everything carefully. Dates, times, witnesses, and the responses or lack thereof from the Bensons. This will ensure any action we take is factual and credible. Are you prepared to do this?" "Yes," Maya replied firmly. "I have notes from last night and several witnesses who saw what happened. I want to make sure this doesn't just blow over. They need to understand that respect and professionalism matter." "Good," Jordan said. "I'll make a few calls on your behalf, but first I need you to remain calm and composed. This is about strategic action, not emotion. You did well by maintaining dignity at the party. That same approach will now guide our next steps." Maya hung up the phone, feeling a mix of relief and resolve. She returned to her work, focusing on her nonprofit, but her mind kept returning to the Bensons. She knew their arrogance had consequences, and she was ready to ensure they would face them. By late morning, Jordan had already made his first calls. One of those calls was to Mr. Carter, a philanthropist and business leader who had attended the party. Jordan carefully outlined what had occurred, emphasizing Maya's professionalism and the Bensons' lack of courtesy. Carter listened attentively, expressing concern. "Jordan," he said, "if this is true, it reflects poorly on the Bensons' judgment. They are negotiating a massive deal with several investors, including some of my contacts. I cannot endorse a family that demonstrates this kind of disrespect, especially when it involves someone representing a charitable cause." Jordan assured him that Maya's account was accurate and fully documented. Carter's tone grew firmer. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll reconsider any ongoing negotiations. If they think wealth excuses arrogance, they will learn otherwise." Meanwhile, the Bensons were blissfully unaware of the storm beginning to gather around them. David had woken up with a dull sense of regret, but assumed that the incident at the party was behind them. Clara busied herself with her usual social obligations, and Henry reviewed business reports entirely focused on potential deals. No one seemed to notice the ripple effect already in motion. Maya, however, was deliberate and precise. She reached out to other guests who had witnessed the incident, confirming their recollections of the night. Each account aligned with hers, detailing the spill, the laughter, and the dismissive behavior. Maya felt a quiet satisfaction. Her actions had been measured, her dignity intact, and now, everything was documented. By mid-afternoon, news began to spread quietly in business circles that the Benson family's behavior at the party was under scrutiny. Emails and calls circulated between investors and consultants, all questioning whether a family so disrespectful could be trusted with high-level negotiations. Maya remained focused on her work, confident that integrity and professionalism would speak louder than wealth. At the Benson penthouse, the first signs of tension began to appear. One of their financial advisors called Henry, mentioning an unexpected hesitation from investors. "They're reconsidering the deal, sir," the advisor said cautiously. "There are concerns about the family's conduct and professionalism." Henry frowned, unable to believe what he was hearing. "What conduct?" he demanded. "We've done nothing wrong. This must be a misunderstanding." David, sitting nearby, felt a growing sense of dread. He realized that his careless actions at the party might have far-reaching consequences. He tried to explain to his father and advisor what had happened, but the words felt hollow. Henry waved him off, unwilling to consider that something as small as a spilled glass could jeopardize a billion-dollar deal. Clara, more observant, sensed that the situation was serious. "We should investigate before reacting," she suggested carefully. "There might be more to this than we realize." Meanwhile, Maya received another call. It was Mr. Jordan, his voice calm but firm. "Maya, the Benson family's deal is at risk. Several investors have expressed concern about their professionalism, and they are asking questions about last night's events. This is exactly what we anticipated. You've handled yourself perfectly, and the consequences are beginning to show." Maya allowed herself a small, quiet smile. She had not sought revenge, only fairness and respect, and now, the impact of their arrogance was beginning to unfold. Naturally and inevitably. Throughout the day, Maya continued her work, speaking with donors, planning new initiatives, and ensuring her nonprofit's operations remained unaffected by the unfolding events. Her focus never wavered, even as the Bensons' reputation started to crack in the business community. By evening, the Benson family received a formal message from one of their primary investors. The tone was polite but firm. Concerns about professionalism and respect were cited as reasons to pause negotiations. The potential $1 billion deal was now uncertain, and the family could not ignore it. David stared at the message, stunned. For the first time, he understood the true impact of his actions and the seriousness of underestimating someone like Maya Lewis. Clara and Henry exchanged worried glances, realizing that wealth and influence were not enough to protect them from the consequences of arrogance. That night, Maya returned home, tired but composed. She reflected on the day's events with a sense of calm satisfaction. She had not sought to humiliate anyone, yet fairness had prevailed. She had maintained dignity, integrity, and focus, and the world had begun to notice. As she prepared for the next day, Maya understood a vital truth. Respect, professionalism, and grace were far more powerful than wealth or social status. And in the coming days, the consequences of last night's events would continue to unfold, shaping not just her future, but the fate of the Benson family as well. The following morning, the Benson family's penthouse was unusually quiet. The grand chandeliers sparkled in the sunlight, but their glow did little to lighten the tense atmosphere. Henry Benson sat at the head of the long marble dining table, staring at his laptop screen with a frown. Clara stood nearby, her hands lightly resting on the back of a chair, while David paced the room, each step echoing in the spacious apartment. "Henry, we need to address this immediately," Clara said carefully. "The investor emails are piling up. They are questioning our behavior at the gala. This is serious." Henry rubbed his temples, frustrated. "Questions? From investors? About a spilled glass of wine?" "It's not just a glass of wine," David said, his voice tinged with unease. "It's the way Maya handled herself. People are noticing how calm and composed she was, and it reflects poorly on us. They see our arrogance. They see disrespect, and they're worried." Henry shook his head. "I still don't understand. It was an accident. Everyone spills something from time to time. This shouldn't affect our deals," Clara frowned. "It does when the person affected is someone influential, David. Maya Lewis isn't just any guest. She represents a nonprofit that has connections with powerful investors, and she documented everything. This is more than a social faux pas. It's a reflection of our professionalism." David stopped pacing and leaned against the table. For the first time, he felt the full weight of the evening's events. He had acted carelessly, laughing with his friends while Maya remained dignified. And now, he realized, that very dignity was turning against them. Across the city, Maya Lewis was already at her office, calmly reviewing her schedule for the day. She had received calls from several key investors who had attended the gala. Each call carried a similar tone: admiration for her professionalism, concern about the Bensons' behavior, and a reconsideration of ongoing business commitments. Maya listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. Her nonprofit's mission was her priority, but she understood the importance of this moment. Without seeking revenge or attention, she had created a situation where accountability and respect mattered more than wealth or influence. By late morning, the first major setback reached the Benson family. A prominent investor, one who had been ready to sign off on a $1 billion partnership, sent a formal letter expressing concern about the family's conduct. The tone was polite but unmistakable. The deal could not move forward until these concerns were addressed. Henry's face turned red as he read the email. "This is absurd," he shouted. "An accident at a party? We are billionaires. How can a single moment ruin years of trust and business?" Clara placed a hand on his arm, speaking gently but firmly. "Henry, it's not just the accident. It's how it was handled. Maya Lewis showed dignity, professionalism, and respect. The Bensons did not. People noticed that." David felt a pang of guilt. He realized that his arrogance had consequences far beyond what he had imagined. "I should have apologized properly," he muttered. "I didn't think it would matter, but now it's clear. It does." The day continued with a series of calls, emails, and meetings that left the Benson family scrambling. Investors and business partners questioned their professionalism, expressing hesitation to move forward with any agreements. Even partners who had previously been loyal began to distance themselves, citing concern over reputation and judgment. Meanwhile, Maya Lewis remained composed. She responded to every call and email with calm professionalism, emphasizing her nonprofit's goals while maintaining integrity in her communication. She did not gloat, nor did she seek to harm the Benson family unnecessarily. Yet the ripple effect of the previous night's events continued to grow. By mid-afternoon, news of the canceled deals had begun to circulate quietly within business circles. Social media, always alert to high-profile events, picked up the story in subtle ways. Investors discussed the incident online, emphasizing the importance of respect and professionalism. The Benson name, long associated with wealth and success, now carried whispers of arrogance and misjudgment. Henry sat in his office, staring at the messages piling in. His confidence, usually unshakable, was faltering. "We can't let this happen," he muttered to himself. "One spilled glass. It shouldn't matter. But it seems to matter more than anything." Clara stepped closer. "Henry, sometimes money and influence cannot fix what is broken in perception. Respect and integrity cannot be bought. We need to acknowledge this and address it carefully." David, feeling a rare humility, added quietly, "I think Maya Lewis has taught us a lesson. She handled herself better than any of us, and that is why the world is listening to her." At that moment, a phone call came through from one of the remaining major investors. The voice on the other end was firm but respectful. "Mr. Benson, we are reconsidering our commitments. The events at the gala raise questions about leadership and judgment. We need assurances that such behavior will not affect future dealings. Until then, we cannot proceed with the proposed partnership." Henry clenched his fist. "Assurances? How can we give assurances for something that wasn't intended? It was an accident." Clara shook her head. "Intentions matter less than perception, Henry. Maya's grace highlighted our shortcomings. This is a moment we cannot ignore." As the day wore on, the Benson family began to grasp the magnitude of the fallout. Emails continued to arrive, each one reinforcing the consequences of their arrogance. Social media discussions, though subtle, hinted at public disapproval. Their wealth could not protect them from the ripple effects of disrespect and poor judgment. Meanwhile, Maya Lewis continued her work, unaffected by the growing storm surrounding the Benson family. She focused on her nonprofit's initiatives, coordinating events, preparing reports, and speaking with supporters. Her calm demeanor and unwavering focus only strengthened her reputation among those who mattered. By evening, the Benson family gathered once more in the penthouse, the room thick with tension. Henry sat silently, staring out the window at the city below, while Clara and David reviewed the messages and documents that had accumulated throughout the day. "This is worse than I imagined," David said quietly. "I thought a small mistake would blow over, but now, it feels like everything is unraveling." Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's not the mistake, David, it's how it was handled." Maya Lewis showed dignity, composure, and professionalism. People noticed and they responded. That is why the consequences are real. Henry remained silent, finally realizing that wealth and influence alone were not enough. He had always believed that money could solve every problem, that power could fix any mistake. But the events of the past 24 hours had shown him that character, respect, and integrity were far more powerful than any bank account. Across the city, Maya returned home after a long day. She felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had acted with dignity, she had maintained focus, and she had not allowed humiliation to define her. And now, the consequences of the Benson family's actions were unfolding naturally, a reflection of how integrity and respect truly mattered. That night, as the city lights sparkled below her apartment window, Maya understood something deeply important. Life often presented challenges, moments that tested patience, strength, and grace. How one responded to those moments, calmly, confidently, and with dignity, could determine the outcome far more than wealth, status, or influence ever could. For the Benson family, the fallout was only beginning. They would soon realize that arrogance and carelessness could jeopardize even the largest of fortunes, while humility, respect, and professionalism could command influence that money alone could never buy. And for Maya Lewis, the night marked another step in her journey. She had turned a moment of humiliation into a quiet triumph, demonstrating that true strength came from character, and that dignity in the face of adversity could change the course of events in ways no one had imagined. The Benson family's penthouse was quiet that morning, but it carried a weight heavier than the chandeliers that sparkled above them. For the first time in years, the family felt unsettled, uncertain, and exposed. Their wealth, which had always shielded them from consequences, offered no comfort today. Henry Benson sat in his leather chair, staring blankly at the floor. His hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white, and his normally confident posture had slumped into quiet defeat. Clara Benson sat across from him, her usually graceful expression replaced by a worried frown. David paced near the windows, unable to focus on anything, while Emma, the youngest, remained silent, observing the tension in the room. "This is serious," Clara finally said, her voice measured but firm. Henry, David, we cannot ignore what happened. Maya Lewis didn't just handle herself with dignity. She exposed a weakness in the way we behave and present ourselves to the world. Investors noticed. Partners noticed. And now we are paying the price, Henry exhaled sharply. I understand that, Clara. But how could a spilled glass of wine ruin everything? We have billions in assets. We have influence. Surely this will pass? Clara shook her head. It isn't just the spill. It's the arrogance, the dismissive behavior afterward. Maya Lewis's calm and professional response showed everyone in that room what we lacked. Money can't fix that. Respect and integrity can't be bought, Henry. And the world sees it clearly now. David stopped pacing and sat heavily on the couch. He ran a hand through his hair. Frustration etched into every line of his face. I should have apologized properly. I should have treated her with respect. I laughed with my friends while she stood there. Calm poised unshaken. And now our billion-dollar deal is in jeopardy. I never realized a single moment could matter so much. Clara leaned forward, her eyes softening. David, this is a lesson. Not just for you, but for all of us. Maya Lewis demonstrated that dignity, patience, and composure are far more valuable than money or status. People respect character. Investors respect professionalism. And when we fail to demonstrate that, even the wealthiest family can lose credibility. Henry's face was pale, a rare sight for the man who had always been confident, assertive, and in control. I always thought influence and money could solve any problem, he admitted quietly. But now, I see that I was wrong. There are things money cannot fix, and perhaps for the first time I understand that humility and respect matter more than I ever imagined. David nodded. We've always been taught that wealth is power, Henry. But Maya Lewis's presence proved something entirely different. Her composure showed us that influence comes from strength of character, not status. The family fell silent for a moment, each lost in thought. Even Emma, who usually avoided serious conversations, glanced up and said softly, Maybe we've been too focused on appearances. We care so much about how people see us, we forget how we treat them. Henry looked at his youngest child, a faint smile forming despite the tension. Emma, you may be right. We've spent too long assuming that wealth could protect us from everything, including the consequences of our own behavior. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya Lewis was in her office, reviewing reports and preparing for the next steps in her nonprofit initiatives. The calls from investors and business leaders continued, and she handled each with calm professionalism. Her focus remained on her mission, but she could not ignore the ripple effect of her actions. The Benson family, once a symbol of unchallenged power, was now experiencing the consequences of their own arrogance. Maya reflected on the events of the past few days. She had attended the gala with a clear purpose, to secure support for her nonprofit's projects. Yet the spilled wine and the ensuing attention had created an unexpected opportunity. Not for revenge, but for accountability. She had shown that composure, dignity, and professionalism could influence even the most powerful people. Her phone rang, and it was Mr. Jordan, her trusted advisor. Maya, the Benson family is beginning to understand the consequences of their behavior. Several investors have paused negotiations, and their reputation is under scrutiny. You've handled yourself impeccably, and this is exactly what we expected. Maya smiled quietly. I didn't do this to punish them. I just wanted to maintain my dignity and ensure fairness. But it seems the world is noticing. Jordan chuckled softly. And they are. Respect has a way of demanding attention, especially when it contrasts so sharply with arrogance. Back at the Benson penthouse, the family continued to process their situation. Clara suggested they hold a meeting with key advisors to discuss a response strategy, not just for the deal, but for their reputation as well. Henry, still humbled, agreed. For the first time, he felt that acknowledging mistakes openly and sincerely might be more effective than trying to control perception with wealth and influence. David, who had spent years relying on charm and privilege, realized he needed to change. I've taken too much for granted, he admitted to his mother. I assumed that people would overlook disrespect because of our name or our money. But Maya Lewis proved me wrong. I need to learn how to be better, how to treat people with the respect they deserve, Clara nodded. We all do, David. This is a lesson in humility, one that if learned well can make us stronger and more capable in the future. But it requires reflection, sincerity, and change. Henry finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. We have always been a family focused on success. But success without respect is empty. Maya Lewis reminded us that character matters more than wealth. I think it's time we truly understand that lesson. The family spent the rest of the day in discussions, planning how to address the fallout, and more importantly, how to rebuild their reputation. They realized that wealth alone could not protect them. Integrity, respect, and humility were essential, and they had been lacking in the very moments that counted most. Meanwhile, Maya's influence continued to grow. Investors, business leaders, and philanthropists began to reach out to her, not just for support of her nonprofit, but to discuss opportunities for collaboration and partnership. Her calm, measured approach had created trust, respect, and admiration. She did not seek power or recognition, but the strength of her character drew attention and respect naturally. That evening, Maya sat by the window of her small apartment, reflecting on the past week. She thought about the gala, the spilled wine, and the Bensons' arrogance. She realized that life often presented challenges that tested patience, courage, and grace. How one responded in those moments, calmly, respectfully, and with dignity, could determine the outcome far more than status, wealth, or influence ever could. She thought about the Benson family, humbled by the consequences of their behavior. She hoped they would learn from this not just for their business but for their personal growth. Respect, after all, could not be bought, and character could never be replaced by money. As the city lights shimmered below, Maya felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had faced a difficult situation with grace, and in doing so, she had shown that dignity and professionalism mattered more than any luxury or social status. The world had noticed, and for the first time she truly understood the quiet power of her actions. And for the Benson family, the lesson was only beginning. They had been forced to reflect, to reconsider, and to acknowledge that arrogance and carelessness could jeopardize even the greatest fortunes. Maya Lewis, with her calm strength and unwavering dignity, had become a mirror reflecting their weaknesses, and a guide showing the way towards something far more valuable than wealth: integrity, respect, and character. The Benson family's penthouse was unusually quiet that evening. The usual hum of celebration and laughter had vanished, replaced by tension, reflection, and an unspoken awareness of the consequences they now faced. Henry Benson sat in his chair, staring out over the city skyline. The familiar glittering lights, once symbols of power and success, now seemed distant and hollow. Clara Benson sat nearby, her hands folded in her lap, her usual grace tinged with concern. She had spent the day reviewing messages from investors, business partners, and advisors. Each communication carried the same underlying message: respect, dignity, and professionalism mattered far more than wealth. And the Benson family's failure to display these qualities at the gala had put a major deal, worth over $1 billion, in jeopardy. David Benson leaned against the wall, his expression reflective. He had spent the last several days replaying the events of the party in his mind. The spilled wine, the laughter, his careless words, it all seemed so insignificant at the time. But now he understood the real cost of arrogance. Maya Lewis had shown them, through her quiet strength, that character and composure could outweigh status and wealth. Henry finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "We have been given a rare lesson," he said. "Money and influence have carried us far, but they cannot protect us from the consequences of our own behavior. We assumed the world would forgive us because of our name, but we were wrong. Respect and integrity are worth far more than all the wealth we have." Clara nodded. "This is an opportunity to reflect and change, Henry. We need to rebuild our reputation, not just for business, but for ourselves. Actions have consequences, and humility must guide us going forward." David stepped forward, his tone sincere. "I underestimated Maya Lewis. She handled herself with dignity when I acted thoughtlessly. I see now that respect is earned, not assumed. I need to learn how to act with integrity, not just rely on privilege." Henry looked at his children, seeing in their expressions a mixture of realization and humility. "We must all learn this lesson. It is painful, yes, but necessary. If we cannot respect others, no amount of wealth or power will secure our success." Meanwhile, across the city, Maya Lewis continued her work. She had spent the past several days meeting with investors, partners, and supporters. Each interaction reinforced what she had always known: Professionalism, integrity, and composure earned respect in ways that money never could. She remained focused on her nonprofit, ensuring that every action, every decision, and every conversation upheld the values she stood for. Maya reflected quietly on the events of the past week. The gala, the spilled wine, the whispers of the party, it had all tested her patience and composure. And she had passed the test. She had not sought to humiliate or punish the Benson family. She had simply maintained dignity and integrity, yet her actions had consequences, showing that strength of character could influence even the most powerful people. By midweek, the Benson family began to take steps toward repairing the damage. They reached out to their advisors, planning meetings with investors to offer apologies and assurances of professionalism going forward. Henry Benson personally called several key partners, expressing sincere regret for the behavior exhibited at the gala and emphasizing their commitment to integrity in future dealings. David Benson followed suit, taking personal responsibility for his actions. He wrote letters of apology to Maya Lewis and several influential attendees of the gala, acknowledging his mistakes and promising to act with greater care, respect, and professionalism in the future. Clara Benson also played a key role, offering guidance on how to address social and business interactions with humility. She worked with her family to understand that influence and respect must be earned, not assumed. The family began to recognize that the lesson Maya Lewis had demonstrated was one they needed to carry forward in every aspect of their lives. Across town, Maya received a call from David Benson. He spoke carefully, his tone genuine. "Maya, I wanted to apologize again, not just for the incident, but for underestimating your composure and professionalism. You have taught me and my family a lesson that money could never teach. Thank you." Maya listened quietly, a calm smile forming on her face. "Thank you, David. I appreciate your words. I hope this can be a turning point not just for business but for understanding the importance of respect and dignity." David paused, then continued, "It will be, for all of us. I promise we will do better, not just because we must, but because we want to." As the conversation ended, Maya felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had faced humiliation, stayed calm, and acted with integrity. And in doing so, she had influenced the Benson family to reflect, learn, and grow. The ripple effects of respect, professionalism, and composure were now clear. In the following weeks, news of the Benson family's efforts to repair their reputation began to spread. They publicly acknowledged the incident, expressing genuine regret and a commitment to conduct themselves with greater respect and humility in the future. Business partners and investors noted the change, and slowly, confidence began to return. Maya continued to lead her nonprofit with dedication and focus. Her calm handling of the gala incident had not only strengthened her reputation, but had also created new opportunities for collaboration and support. People recognized her as a figure of integrity, a leader who could inspire and influence without relying on wealth or status. The Benson family also began to see changes within themselves. Henry Benson spoke more thoughtfully, considering the impact of his actions on others. David approached business and social situations with humility and care. Clara guided her children with a renewed focus on values over appearances. And Emma, observing these changes, learned that strength came not from wealth or influence, but from character, respect, and integrity. One evening, several weeks later, Maya attended a charity event. The atmosphere was lively, filled with conversations about meaningful projects, opportunities for growth, and partnerships that could create real change. She moved gracefully through the crowd, confident and composed. At the same event, the Benson family attended as well. They approached Maya cautiously, showing genuine respect and appreciation for her guidance. Henry spoke first. "Maya, we are grateful for the lesson you have shown us. Your composure and professionalism have changed the way we view ourselves and our actions." "Thank you." Maya smiled politely. "I'm glad that this experience has been meaningful. I hope it continues to guide positive choices, not just for business but for life." David added, "We will remember this, Maya. You have taught us something far more important than any deal or contract. You have taught us about respect, dignity, and integrity." The conversation ended on a note of mutual understanding. The Benson family had learned a powerful lesson, and Maya had quietly influenced change without seeking recognition or reward. The spilled wine, the initial humiliation, and the arrogance of the past had become catalysts for growth, reflection, and transformation. That night, Maya returned home and looked out over the city skyline. She thought about the events of the past few weeks, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons learned by those around her. She realized that life often presented difficult moments that tested patience, composure, and integrity. How one responded to these moments could determine not just the immediate outcome, but the character and direction of one's life. For the Benson family, the lesson had been costly, but invaluable. They had faced the consequences of arrogance and carelessness, learned the power of humility, and begun to understand that respect and dignity mattered far more than wealth or influence. And for Maya Lewis, the experience had reinforced a truth she had always known. Strength of character, patience, and integrity are the most powerful tools a person can possess. As the city lights shimmered below, Maya felt a quiet confidence. The world had seen the value of dignity and respect, and her actions had demonstrated that even in the face of arrogance, calm professionalism could create meaningful change. She had not sought revenge, but justice had naturally followed through her composure, strength, and integrity. And as the Benson family reflected on their actions and their growth, they understood a simple truth. No amount of wealth or power could replace respect, integrity, and character. The lesson Maya Lewis had taught them would remain with them forever, guiding their choices, shaping their relationships, and redefining their understanding of true influence and success. The spilled wine, the laughter, the moment of humiliation, it had all become a turning point. For Maya, it was a demonstration of quiet strength. For the Benson family, it was a lesson in humility and reflection. And for everyone who witnessed the events, it was a reminder that respect, dignity, and integrity are the foundation upon which true success is built.